All right, folks, welcome to the session with Danny Gonzalez. Danny is a co-founder of Perception, and this is going to be a really interesting and high impact session for a lot of you who want to break into niches and spaces and work that's more what I would consider more challenging, more high impact, more creative, versus perhaps something that can be a little bit more standardized, like SEO services or pay-per-click services or lead generation services or web design services. Now, mind you, the world still needs those too. But in Danny's case, and in the case of his firm Perception, they do high profile, high impact projects. Now, what am I talking about? Well, for starters, they have worked starting since Iron Man 2. They've worked on almost every single Marvel film that's come out to date, including Batman versus Superman, Captain America Civil War, Captain America Winter Soldier, Iron Man 2, again, like I said, since then, Thor the Dark World, the Thor movie that's coming out, the third installment in the Thor series that's just about to come out. From the time of this interview, they've worked on that too. And then they also, at the same time, work on a lot of real world projects too, designing user experience and kind of the future of our experience in a lot of different kinds of products and services that we use. Now, what are those products and services? Well, Perception has worked in the aerospace industry, cybersecurity, data visualization, automotive, mobile, mixed reality, and I'm sure the list will continue to go on as Perception continues to do the work that they do. So Danny is here with us today to talk about how you would go about building an agency that does high profile, high impact, super unique work, and also be able to just how to be able to communicate that kind of vision and tell that kind of story. Because again, that's very unique and different than, for example, providing lead generation services, if that's something that you're interested in. So with that, Danny, welcome to the Agency Summit. I'm really happy to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andre. Happy to be here.
You know, your guys' resume of the work you've done, and you've probably heard this before, but your guys' resume of the work that you've done sounds like, you know, every fantasy resume for anybody from even probably teenage years who play with toys and hope that they can someday work on projects like that, right?
Right.
And you're actually being able to do that and really define. I mean, you're not just, you guys at Perception are not just creating the user experience for real world technology, but you're actually also creating like our experience as moviegoers of the stories of these movies and that where the comics are, you know, being brought to life.
Mm-hmm.
The first question I want to really ask you, and I want to get right before we started this interview, you told me something about called the science fiction feedback loop, and it's going to be really interesting. And I want you to share that with the audience. But before we even get there, I'm curious to hear this. What was kind of your guys' rite of passage, or what was your rite of passage? What were your rite of passage projects or kind of the dues that you had to pay, so to speak, before you could get to these sort of high profile projects, like doing almost every Marvel film since Iron Man 2?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. You know, the resume is, like you said, it's a very unique resume as far as, you know, having the Marvel films and doing all these cool projects, but it didn't happen overnight.
Sure.
You know, I don't want everybody to think like, oh yeah, these guys got lucky. You know, luck had a lot to do with it. But it started with, you know, the rite of passage and paying the dues. So it started with my business partner Jeremy Lasky and myself. We met at a company called RGA, which back when we were there, they did a lot of feature film work, a lot of advertising agency, you know, commercials, very high end, you know, network promos and rebranding, things like that. So we left. Where they closed the studio doors and they became a digital agency, and now they've just exploded. But we left back in 2001, started Perception.
Okay.
So we already had a pretty good reel, so to speak, you know, pretty good resume when we started Perception. But we worked on very high-end machines at RGA, and when we started Perception, of course, starting a company, you know, we didn't have that much money. But we started to also realize that you could be very creative and basically do all the work over the desktop. So we were one of the, I don't want to date myself, but one of the founding fathers of the desktop platform when, you know, Apple or the Macs were becoming powerful. You know, Final Cut was just coming out. After Effects was very, very powerful. So we took everything we knew from working at RGA and all the tricks of the trade, so to speak, and kind of weave that into the desktop.
Gotcha.
So we did that. Yeah, in the beginning, it was a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. There was nobody calling us, even with a great reel. 9/11 happened, so that stopped. That put the brakes on a ton of things. But then slowly but surely, we started making calls. Back then, it was all about the cold calls and sending out reels and just really trying to meet as many people as possible. And we got an opportunity to pitch HBO for a Sopranos campaign.
Okay.
Remember that show? And we won the project. And from there, they were actually amazed. They actually thought that we had like 5 of these high-end machines called Flames and Infernos, because we were so fast. But in reality, we just set up the project so well, and it was just Jeremy and myself cranking this stuff out. And because of our speed and because of the great work we were doing, they just kept feeding us and feeding us.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of the beginnings of Perception, the rite of passage to get into these, into the Marvel films. Same thing. It was a little bit of, timing. We met with Marvel. The team that now runs Marvel Studios was back then. It was part of a smaller division that did DVDs, animated DVDs, and they had asked us to do a title sequence for one of them, and we pitched it, and they loved it. And after that, they were just like, "Forget it, we're not even pitching anymore. You guys are going to do all of them for us." So we started doing more and more, and all those folks that were there when they decided to open up Marvel Studios, so to actually create a Marvel film. It was no longer, Sony with the rights to Spider-Man, things like that. It was now Marvel, and they came out with Iron Man, was the first one. But with Iron Man 2, they asked us to work on a small piece of the film, and we did that. They loved it, and being from New York, we just started really asking questions and figuring out what else can we do and how can we help with other with other shots in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a phone that Robert Downey Jr. was walking around with, and that we laid the foundation and did the design and the concepts for what that phone should look like.
Gotcha.
And then that snowballed into over 125 shots in the film, and then that snowballed into the movie being done, doing more Marvel work. And then when literally 2 weeks after Iron Man 2 came out, we got a call from a company in Singapore that wanted us to design the interface for a phone and a tablet that was coming out to rival the iPad, which it never did because the iPad's still around. That company,
right.
The other company is no longer. But it was a very interesting experience, and that's really what laid the foundation to where we are today, where we do, the science fiction UIs and the we'll call them the real technology projects.
Right. And we'll get to this, but you talked about the science fiction feedback loop where companies see the science fiction that you guys create in movies and then actually contact you guys to come into the real world and design their next generation of technology or products that they're actually going to sell in the real world. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I want to get to that, but let me ask you a few questions first about just some of what you just described and what you just shared with your guys' backstory. Would it be accurate to say that in your experience and maybe in the experience of those that you've seen around you, some of once you get a big client like HBO, if you do good work the first time, after that point, they just kind of keep feeding you work. So it's hard to crack in, but once you've cracked in, the business is pretty consistent. Would that be an accurate statement, or is it a little bit different in your experience?
I think it's accurate as long as you continue to do groundbreaking work and continue to impress a client.
Okay.
One of the things that even HBO back in the day, they continually were impressed by how many ways we could reanimate or redesign, not redo the whole logo, but reanimate like just the HBO logo itself.
Got it.
A lot of companies or a lot of even designers that will work on HBO like, oh, I got to do something again with this HBO logo. It's the same logo every time. Well, how many times can I redo something with this? Mm-hmm. And we take that as a huge challenge and a design challenge. So if it's a design challenge and we're a design studio, basically back then is what we were. It's just a design studio. How many ways can we reconfigure or redo this logo in a way that our clients at HBO feel like these guys could do this forever. And that's right. The kind of impressions we were trying to make. And that's what we did with Marvel. We did the one project. they're very loyal to us as long as, you do great work. And it's more of a partnership and trying to, give that feeling to the clients that like, hey, we're in this together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make this, super cool, and let's do some great work together. We get on calls with Marvel, and it's the executives and the directors and the VFX producers and some of their artists as well. And it's just it's a conversation between all of us. It's not us just saying, hey, we're going to do this cool thing and we're going to give it to you, and then call us when it's up on the film.
Gotcha.
So,
That makes sense. Another thing that I heard you say in there was that you guys got very, very curious about what other parts of the movie or shots you could help with in Iron Man 2, besides just what you were at first slated to do or given to do.
mm-hmm.
I think what you just shared there might apply to any type of agency working with any type of large client is stay curious, keep looking for even small ways to keep adding value, right? Can
Yep.
you talk a little bit more about the process of how you guys went about being curious and providing value, or just trying to be present in other parts and facets of the movie, but without being annoying, maybe being seen as a welcome presence, or as, having your efforts being appreciated?
Right. Well, I think it comes down to, everybody, seems to get on phone calls and listen to the client and, and take notes, but you really have to, there's listening, and then there's listening and really understanding what the client wants. Anybody can build pretty pictures or design pretty pictures, but, can you build an interface that's going to fit in a phone that Robert Downey Jr. has already been recorded doing the interactions with on a blank piece of glass from, Home Depot for $3.
Mm-hmm.
And can we do that within, a short time frame in this film, and, trick the viewer into being like, wow, was that an actual phone? Was that real? Because it looked real.
Gotcha.
So the way we went about, especially for that project, was we were on a call. They wanted us to do this video wall. So Robert Downey Jr. in the beginning of the movie, he lands as Tony Stark, and he introduces his father at the Stark Expo.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns around, and this big video wall kind of unfolds, and his father starts to speak. So all they wanted us to do is like the cool kind of desktop pattern on this video wall, and then what's the transition into Howard Stark speaking, which is his father. But one of those designs that we had, as far as what we presented for the wall itself, was something that Jon Favreau, on the call, the director, said that looks like something that could be a design for his phone. So all of a sudden, our ears perked up. Of course, you have to be a fan of whatever and have some passion for the project you're working on. I mean, that helps, because these cues it's like automatic,
Right.
But we heard that, and we were just like, okay, we're going to get off this phone call. We're going to show them what that phone's supposed to look like, because we're Marvel fans, or we should just say we're all comic book fans here. And let's send them an animation of what we think it should look like. Who cares if they're not asking for it or not? And, Jeremy and myself are both born and bred in New York, so we don't wait for things to be given to us. We kind of take them.
Mm-hmm.
So we took the opportunity on a Friday. We finished the call, and we spent all weekend. We designed what we thought the interface should look like, and we sent it to Marvel that Monday. And then they actually didn't call us back for a while. We thought, damn, that was really bad to do. But then they did reach out after a month. They were a little busy putting together a film, so they couldn't get back to us right away. And they said, we loved your phone test. Would you guys be interested in designing the actual phone? And we said yes. And then from the phone, it went to, well, there's a scene where he's doing he's interacting with a smart table. Can you do that? And we're like, yes. And so it slowly became designing Tony Stark's digital universe.
Gotcha.
From that one phone test that we sent.
Right. If you hadn't sent that one phone, I know this is such a maybe like a cliche question, but do you think that you guys have been part of almost every single Marvel film since Iron Man 2, if not for taking the initiative on sending that phone test?
I think they love the extra effort that we put into, and the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what they come to us now. It's more about like, how do these characters use these devices, these futuristic interfaces, or how do we tell the story through these, interfaces. Because now, I mean, these heads-up displays, these interfaces, for example, we did RoboCop in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the view of the person watching the movie is from the inside of RoboCop himself, looking out and seeing the world, and there's graphics going on constantly. So there's a lot of what we do in these graphics are telling the story and helping to move the plot forward. And I think Marvel appreciates that tremendously when it comes to the work we do, because there's visual effects companies do great work that can design interfaces, and then there's UX UI companies that do great work that can design great websites and experiences. And this is where that science fiction the loop that we talked about earlier comes in. It's that there's no company like that does, except Perception, that does both.
Gotcha.
So we use, can I bring it up now? Or do you want
to
ask
Yeah. No, yeah. That's gonna be the next thing is gonna transition to.
So we use our films as kind of like our testing ground,
mm-hmm.
and we'll create these futuristic pieces of art. We'll say, these interfaces or these experiences or these storytelling aspects of what the story needs to be, and that all of a sudden, the fanboys and the fangirls that are usually in the technology world, see the films, and that feeds into the technology projects. And those people reach out to us and say, hey, we're working on something for this futuristic product that we have. We want it to be built within 2 years, but we could really use some help in adding some cinematic quality to it that you guys did in, Iron Man or, Captain America, whatever it was. Can you help us with the project? So we say yes, but then the loop then starts to become ingested by either the user during the experience or the viewer, of course, during the movie, and it starts that feed again. So we continually have to come up with something cool and unique for the futuristic, for the sci-fi movies.
Right.
And then that feeds into, again, the technology part of the world that we play in, that then, we start to create and shape and then build those experiences. And then once those start to come to life, then again, those customers experience that, and then it starts to feed again into, so it's a constant feed into, sci-fi. It's, sometimes we use the line, bringing science fiction to science fact.
Gotcha.
So it's a constant loop to go back and forth, back and forth.
Got it. Okay. And then whatever becomes a fact is now driving the iteration and innovation of the fiction, right?
Yeah.
It's a constant circle. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, a great example is we did Captain America: Civil War, and there's a scene where Nick Fury, Sam Jackson, is in a black SUV and he's being chased by, it's just a car chase.
Mm-hmm.
And a heads-up display comes up and it says, and he's been wounded, so like it gives him his kind of like an X-ray of like, hey, your arm's broken or you've been
Gotcha.
shot here and blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, all right, call so-and-so. And then they start to, then the car starts to take over and goes into autonomous mode. You start to realize, okay, this thing's driving itself. So we did that. And then we actually had an automobile company call us. I can't say who, but this company was working on a truck that had very similar aspects of what we did in the film. And they're like, you guys nailed exactly what we were trying to do with this new truck that's coming out in the future.
Mm.
You had our thoughts completely down, like as if you came in here and stole our ideas and then built it in the movie. Can you guys help us kind of build that into this truck that we're trying to build for the future? And we're like, sure. So that's exactly, one of that's exactly the point I was trying to make, is that, we did something for a film that then fed directly into a technology company. To me, automotive is nothing but tech these days.
Sure.
And then that, again, then we did that. And then now it's all about, autonomous modes and all these other things with some of the movies that we're doing. And that's going to feed directly into what, everybody's talking about now within the automotive world.
Gotcha. With that said, the fact that these kinds of opportunities happen with a science fiction feedback loop in place. With that said, before our interview, we were talking a little bit about how you were sharing a little bit about how you still got to go out there and tell the story. You still go out there and tell Perception's story to be able to book business, get new clients, right? is it a situation now where do you find yourself now in a situation where you can kind of just coast and the business is so inbound so much that you don't really have to go out and look for new business anymore? Or are you still out there actively, what we would consider, prospecting and generating new opportunities for Perception?
Right. No, I would consider, I think once you get comfortable, you start to, it's just a bad situation to get comfortable.
Okay.
We continue to work hard as far as, trying to get more clients. There's definitely no coasting. One of the tricks, or I should say one of the, I guess, frustrations of working on these tech projects is, we can't just put it on a website and do PR about it and anything like that, because, we're working on some vehicles that are not coming out or not even being talked about, as far as the public seeing it for like the year 2030.
Gotcha.
So I can't really, I can't get more automotive if I can't show the automotive work. It's that classic agency model. It's like you get the work you got kind of a thing, or you get the work done before, because that's what your specialty is, so to speak. So it gets a little tricky. And in that regard, that's when we use the film work more to showcase that. And that was something that that frustrated us, especially because our last, not our current one, but our last website only showcased the film work and had a little bit of mention of the tech work. Now it's a little bit more broken down and into industries and things like that, and we're allowed to tell the story because we had some serious conversations with our clients saying, look, we unless you're going to work with us forever, we need to find more clients. So we need to kind of not share every detail, but at least give people enough information that, when they go to the sites, like, oh, I see what they do. They do this stuff for film and then they do it for real life.
Right.
So yeah, but, I still, if we were in coast mode, I wouldn't even be doing this, talking to you today or going to speak at, schools. And, Jeremy and I have had presentations and talks at Samsung. We spoke at Apple, a ton of different companies, Boeing, all across the United States. So, part of it, I think, is just, again, being that typical New Yorker, we just don't stop. But the other part is, again, once you get comfortable, that's when everything starts to go downhill.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you this: what works the best? What has worked the best, or what is working the best for generating new business for you guys? Because again, your whole offering is different, right? Is not the traditional like lead generation marketing services or anything like that. So I would have to imagine that your whole offering is different. And how I see it is, when let's say a CMO, when a chief marketing officer is buying lead generation services, for example, right? Their criteria is, I imagine, very different than the buyer who's buying a reimagination of the user experience for automotive, right? For the automotive industry or for mixed reality, right? So I'm curious to know, who is your buyer? Because it's not the chief marketing officer, unless I'm wrong, right? But my assumption is that it's not. But who's your guys' primary buyer, right, for these types of projects? And then how different is their criteria for evaluating who to hire versus like a CMO hiring a marketing firm?
Right. So, our criteria is mostly on, the UX team within these companies, technology team. Sometimes it's their design team. Sometimes these big companies have an internal design team that are looking for, an outside perspective, because they're in it and they're working on the one thing so much, and almost goes back to, working on that HPO logo every single time. How can I do it? How can I do it? You're so close to it that you don't know how to make it different. And then someone comes in and is like, just make it orange. It's like, oh yeah, I should have thought of that in the first place. So, that's the type of, the people we go after, and it eventually ends up, we work directly with, CEOs, because what we do is going to directly affect the path of the future that this product is going to go down, and where it's going to live in the future. So, we deal a lot with like CEOs once we get in the door, because they they have to be very involved, because if this is something that that brand or that company is going to, deploy out into the world, they want to be heavily involved with it, of course.
Gotcha.
So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I mean, your guys' buyer, your guys' whole criteria, the person who's buying your service or your offering is different. But you guys are still an agency. And so what I'm just trying to bring to light and help share with the audience is, if anybody here is building an agency like yours that's unique and does high impact and less volume work, but more high impact work, what does that process look like?
Mm-hmm. There's also, usually there's someone like the head of innovation that also is someone we target as well.
What is your sales cycle like for landing a project in the real world? Like, let's say you're taking something from movie concept and you're opening doors in the real world. What are you doing? Are you doing speaking gigs at industry events? Are you literally cold emailing, cold calling, CEOs and somebody who's the head of an innovation department? Like, how are you going about opening doors? Are you networking and asking for referrals? Right. I mean, what are you doing?
Right. Well, I mean, the best work is the warm leads that either we get phone calls from the website or referrals. Nowadays, I think it's very different from when, my father told me, it's like, get a job at IBM and just work there forever and retire and then you'll be done.
Right.
Now it's like people are working at one place for 4 years and they go to another place for 5, and then they're 2, and then maybe they're somewhere else for 7. So, the referral process is definitely something that, we love working with clients that we worked with in the past that have moved on to, other, into other companies. And usually, of course, if it's, someone we work with at an automotive company, they're usually going to go to another automotive company. So that's, it's something that's very familiar to us. It's not something that's going to be, foreign as far as like the specific project.
Gotcha.
But we also do a lot of what you mentioned, not so much cold calling, but, every once in a while I'm on LinkedIn checking for titles as far as, specific companies that we want to work with. Something that we instituted at the very beginning of Perception was a dream list of clients. And, Marvel was up there. Actually, Playboy was one of the clients, HBO, a lot of networks, ESPN. And we still do that today. It's like, all right, who do we want to attack and who do we think, we can add value to if we join forces with that brand?
Gotcha. Now, let's say you want to work with a high profile brand. Let's pick a high profile brand like an ESPN or a Playboy. How would you go about opening doors with them? How would you start looking for inroads and opening doors to be able to get in front of decision makers or connect with the people that could either be the decision maker or connect or warmly endorse you to a decision maker?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you how we did it back then when it was just the two of us. We went when it was Marvel and we kept on calling them saying, hey, look, we got some ideas. We got to show you for, back then it was Hulk, the Hulk that Ang Lee produced.
Okay.
And they were finally like, okay, why don't you guys come in? Cause I think we said something like, hey, we're actually going to be in LA tomorrow, or like, maybe it was like a Tuesday and we said, we're going to be in LA on Thursday. We'd love to show you some ideas. And they're like, sure, come on in. And Jeremy and I didn't have tickets or anything, but we were just like, what, we're going to throw it out there. And if they say yes, we're going to get on a flight. We're going to get our asses over there.
Right. And this is with you already having HBO as a client, right? So you already have like a big, what do we call it, blue chip or an A-list client.
Yeah, we had a decent
resume.
Yeah, we had a decent, portfolio of clients already. But again, we didn't want to get comfortable. So, HBO at one point could say, hey, we're done with you. And they leave. We were lucky they stayed with us for, 8 or 9 years. But then, the networks kind of all brought everything in-house, and it was, studios like ours were closing down left and right. And we had already made the shift to doing the film and the tech work. So we were fine. But, what we had is our competition in the past, they were all closing down.
Gotcha.
So we got on a plane, we went to Marvel and we pitched the ideas and they loved it. And we left that, that mark on them that like, okay, if we get something, we got to work with these guys. Cause number one, they're passionate. They know our brand. And number two, the ideas that we showed them, they loved. So why wouldn't they want to work with us?
Right.
They knew right away, like these guys, it's it's a no-brainer. So now it's a little bit different. We'll go to trade shows like CES is a huge one. Jeremy and I go to every year. We'll walk around the floor and we'll go to different sections. So he'll take automotive and some other ones, and I'll take smart home and some other ones. And it's more about just having conversations with people. And then once they realize what you're doing, they're kind of like, that's interesting. Of course, it doesn't hurt that you tell them, by the way, my company designed all of Tony Stark's, digital universe. That's like
Sure.
it's the golden crowbar.
Right.
But that's the way, that's still the way we get a lot of our work. And now, we don't have to fly. We used to have to go everywhere because of the crazy MSAs and NDAs that we've signed with technology clients. Now we could do, WebEx and things like that,
Gotcha.
where it's a little bit looser, so we don't have
Right.
to travel as much. But it's still knocking down doors and building relationships and meeting people and telling the story. And again, if they love the story, then hopefully they'll work with us.
When you go to an event like CES, are you doing any sort of booth sponsorships, or are you just going as an attendee?
We always go as attendee. I think if you're for a company like us anyway, if you're not walking the floor and seeing all the new things that are out, then it's a waste. I think if you're
Gotcha.
someone like a 3D printing company and you got to showcase your product, then that's the best time to get a booth.
Got it. Okay.
But I'll go in one day. I'll do like the whole North Wing, and I'll go from wearables and Under Armour's over there, and all these different wearable companies. And then the next day I'll do the South Wing, and it'll be something completely different where like automotive is and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. In creating really high profile, high impact projects like this, like being able to walk around, like you said, with the golden crowbar and be able to drop, hey, we created Tony Stark's digital universe. There was once upon a time when it was just you and your business partner. I'm going to guess that it's no longer just you and your business partner, right?
No.
Yeah. And I feel like for what you guys do, the margin of error is really, really low.
Mm-hmm.
Just because everything is so visible, so high impact, so whole profile. So to be able to consistently put out work like that, you guys got to have a team that does well under pressure, that does well with translating verbal vision into actual aesthetic vision, just something people can
Mm-hmm.
see. How do you guys go about finding and attracting and recruiting basically world-class talent that can do that? Because you can be a fan of something, but that doesn't mean you're good at, turning that into reality from a design perspective, from user experience perspective. So how do you guys go about finding and attracting and recruiting talent like this and then retaining it? Because what you do is pretty, again, like I said, pretty high wire.
Right. So, well, again, it doesn't hurt that we're doing, the Marvel work that attracts a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably the only company in New York that's doing it. But I think also, we try to find people that are passionate about the work. Again, it goes back to, we don't just design pretty pictures because it's cool. We design these interesting user interfaces with a lot of thought behind it. And I think that's something that attracts talent as well, is that they're not just, designing something for design's sake. They're designing something that's telling a story that also has to look like it's being used by someone, whether that be a screen, on the Quinjet, or whether it be the heads-up display in Iron Man's headpiece. So I think it's it's definitely a rare breed, and we'll try and find different aspects of like it's a good designer, or this person does some cool UIs but has a nice UX background. Let's bring them in, and then just from osmosis with being with the rest of the team, they start to kind of build that it's not necessarily resume, but more of that design sense of what we showcase to our clients when we're getting on calls or when we're presenting different ideas for films or the tech projects. And how do we retain them? It's crazy. I think a lot of the team here likes punishment because the film world is definitely, it's psychotic.
Is it?
We get a call on a Friday and they're like, "Hey, we need everything by Tuesday." It's like, there goes a weekend, there goes everything. We've had people sleeping here for a couple days at a time. So it's something that I went through well, definitely I went through it when we first opened Perception, but even before Perception, when we had our RGA, I mean, I remember sleeping there for a week when we were working on certain projects. So again, it's not necessarily, we have a saying, it's, oh, man, I can't remember the quote now. I have it written down somewhere. It's, here, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I rather have, I always say this to all my clients. I would put my team up against any team in the world, and I know that they will outperform anybody. Because a lot of people just design things just to make it look good. But my team designed things that make it, that it looks good, but there's a lot of thought behind it. And that's why they spend so much time on these things. People are always amazed. And again, this is one of the reasons why Marvel comes back to us, is that we put so much thought into the film, and people are just like, well, who cares? It's just a screen that someone's touching. It's fake. But that's actually the opposite. That's the wrong thinking. It's the thinking of make it look real and make it look like it's something that someone would actually use in the real world, even if it is 5 years from now. Because then not only will the technology clients call us, but then people are going to believe it even more.
Right.
And if, and everybody's so tech savvy now that, even my mom goes to these movies, she's like, that's fake. That would never happen on an iPad, or that would never happen on on a screen. That's impossible. And I think that's part of why these superhero movies do pretty well, because it's kind of believable, especially, that when you see the first the first Spider-Man with Sam Raimi, where it's, he's just figuring out his powers, or the first Iron Man where he's like, he does a little bit of a burst and then he goes flying and he hits into a wall. It's like, that's something that you and I would do if we had that suit on. It's believable.
Right.
He's not flying perfectly as soon as he gets the suit on.
Right.
There's a lot of crash and burns, so to speak. So I think it's definitely, a specialty of getting into the grind of these film projects, and even the tech projects are very, very tough. And it's just a special breed of person that we look for when we're hiring, for the core team. Even we use freelancers, and even the freelancers that come in, tell us when they leave, it's like, man, that was one of the best projects I've ever worked on. I've never been challenged so hard on trying to figure out, XYZ, or, putting them to the challenge when it comes to telling a story through a graphic that's so small, it's on someone's watch in a film, but it's a close-up of the watch. So whatever's on there has got to tell, or continue to tell, the story of what's going on.
Gotcha.
So
that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of tough projects and crashing and burning, are there any stories that you can share with us or relate to us about times when maybe you guys as an agency did on a project ended up feeling like you crashed or burned, and kind of what did you learn from that, kind of to make yourself as an agency better?
Right. So I think one of the things we learned early on was that, you can't be everything to everyone.
Okay.
So that's when we really narrowed our focus to, let's just say focus on user interfaces in films, and the same for technology.
What were you offering or kind of making available before that time, or before that decision, that you realized was just kind of not going to work for you guys?
Right. So we were a motion graphics studio.
Okay.
We did video production. We did editing. We did live action shooting. We did so many things that it was just, after a while, it was like, wait a second, this is just it's just too much, and you might be making a little bit of money on it, but in the end, you make more money specializing in something, because your focus and your expertise is that much better, that the client actually comes to you. It's like, these are the best people in town. I got to get them. And then you start to get that continuative, where you could forecast projects coming in, and that sales cycle starts to build and build and build. We're still not as narrow as I think we should be, but at least we're doing UIs for film and we're doing UIs for real tech. Our technology clients sometimes say, hey, can you do the development? We'll say, we can, but we partner up with people. We don't do development in-house. That's not our expertise. Our expertise is the UX and the UI and coming up with these crazy, cool, futuristic things that your product can do. And then we'll bring in these other specialists, because once they realize that, we're the specialists in one thing, and then we bring in the specialist for the back end, let's say, they appreciate that. And then they're like, okay, this is going to work out right, because it's not Danny trying to be a developer.
Right.
It's Danny doing what he does best, or Perception doing what they do best. And then we're going to bring in someone else that does what they do best. And I think that's something we learned along the way, where we were trying to do a lot of different things. And it was like, oh yeah, we'll just hire this and then do this. And it was just too much to handle. And it was just, it got crazy at times. So now, for us, it's going back to the sales cycle, or even when projects are in-house, obviously you're the most profitable when you have multiple projects going on at once. But even at certain points, we turn away work, because it's just, once you add that one more project on top, all the other ones just start to fall apart. So project, let's say it's number 6. So now 6 comes in, and now 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 are going to start to suffer, because now you're spreading yourself too thin. The specialists that you have on all these other projects, now you got to get them onto the 6th project. So now their time's even, they're working later hours, and the next day they're in here and they're not, and there's only so many of these you can drink.
Right.
Right. So you can't, there's at a certain point, the quality of work starts to degrade itself. So for us, it's being selective, and it's making sure that clients understand that, they have to collaborate with us. It's not just here, Perception, do it. It's like, here, Perception, we want to work with you. Tell us what you need us to do, and we'll do it. And then that's when the project comes out great, because it's like, okay, well, you guys. So for example, we redesigned and configured the UX for a flight simulator. So what the instructors use to control this flight simulator, it's 2 20-inch touchscreens.
Okay. And
we redesigned the user interface and the whole experience for the instructors, and how they use it and how they interact with it. But myself and every team member here, we have no experience in flight simulators, or flight for that matter, except for being on a flight to go to, to LA or whatever it is to do work, or go to Vegas CES. So they want us to do it. And we said, all right, well, this basically comes down to, our conditions. And what condition number 1 is, you have to come here, or we come there, and you have to give us a brain dump as to what it is that this thing does. And then we actually got into the simulators. The team got to actually fly these simulators. So we did a whole expansive, interviews, flying in these things ourselves, giving us all this information. And then from there, we started breaking down, okay, this is what the experience is going to be like. We're going to change these things and create these widgets for shortcuts, because a couple of the instructors complained that it took forever to get in and out of these different areas. And then we skinned the new layouts that we designed, and it came out great. But if they had come to us and said, hey, we just need a cool UI, and then just threw it on a lap, it would never have worked, because they weren't involved. And they're the experts in their field. We're the experts in ours. And together we make, with our clients, we make that perfect product.
What's your recommendations or insights around getting a client to be more collaborative, to understand the importance of the communication process, to not get frustrated by it? You know what I mean? Like there's some clients out there that I would imagine, especially for a lot of the agency owners and consultants that are listening in here right to this session, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's some clients communicate better than others, right? What's your guys' approach, or what's your advice to being able to ensure that getting a client to really share in detail, so that you then know that on the receiving end, you're actually understanding it correctly and accurately, so you can deliver an end result that the client is actually looking for?
Mm-hmm. Well, it goes back to being an expert in that field. If you're not an expert, then you're not going to be able to ask the right questions. If you're not asking the right question, you're not going to get the right answers from the clients. And if you don't get the right answers from the clients, you're not going to be able to design anything for them that's going to have any positive outcome. So to me, it basically comes down to having the right people on your team that are going to ask the right questions. Sometimes we'll get calls from clients and they'll say, "Hey, you guys do cool work. We don't know what we want to do with you, but we know we want to work with you." It's like, wait, okay, but what do you want to do? We don't know, but we have this product X and we want it to be out in a year. So at that point, it's like, all right, we'll give you like let's figure out a discovery phase. So then we can go back and forth a little bit and figure out what is it that you need. Is it even worth it for us to get involved with you at this stage? Different types of things we do during discovery, and then we'll figure out from there. Okay, now we know exactly what you need. We'll put together, a time frame, put together some sort of value of what that's gonna be, and then the project starts. And then sometimes we have clients that know exactly what they need, and that's when we say, okay, well, first step is we get in a room together and we start to figure out. They'll start telling us what they want and what they need, and then my team will start throwing up, whether it be inspirational frames, or we'll get on a whiteboard and start drawing things, and then together, then you just start to see the magic happen, and then it starts to unfold as to what it is. And I think when you get those people in a room, and sometimes you have, I think what you're getting at is you have some people that don't necessarily know how to share what they want, or how to explain what they want. Once you get them in a room, or even over like a whiteboard on like a WebEx or something like that, and they feel like they're getting involved, it just starts to open up. You show them some inspiration, or you show them this, like, what, I like circular things. I don't like orange. I don't like red, but I really enjoy yellow, the color yellow. And slowly but surely, and this is something we did with that flight simulator, there were instructors actually that were veterans. They were retiring 5 years, and like, don't redesign this thing. I'm going to retire. I do not want to learn something new. And then there were these newer instructors that had a nicer interface on their, iPhone or Samsung phone than they did working on this, $20 million flight simulator. And they're like, why does my phone have a better interface than this piece of machinery? So we tried to find something in the middle, and the only way that we can get buy off from all these folks was, let's get them involved. Let's get all these people in a room, figure out, all right, we'll start throwing up posters like, you like this, do you like that, do you like that? And then even if we guided them and told them, like, this is actually better if we do it this way, they'd be like, oh, okay. As long as they felt like they were involved in the process, it worked out perfectly.
Gotcha.
So I think it's getting these people involved. And even if they say, hey, and this is the hardest thing to say no to, but like, here's a check. I don't know what I want, but here's a check, and just do what I want you to do. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, I can't cash that check. You got to give me more than that. You have to, again, it goes back to asking the right questions, and then having some sort of expertise in what it is that they're trying to hire you for.
Mm-hmm. As we're wrapping up here and getting to the top of the hour, question I have for you is, for an agency that does, let's say, offers something like pay-per-click services, it's kind of a volume business. There's tens of thousands of potential leads and opportunities depending on the niche that you're in. I mean, you can literally go and start prospecting by Googling businesses in a niche, or LinkedIn mailing, or whatever it may be. For you guys, though, it's a little different. The clientele that you serve usually needs to have a slightly bigger budget, I'm going to guess, right? Mm-hmm. And the projects are a little bit more unique. At the same time, you and your business partner still have the same obligations of running an actual business, right? At the end of the day, take out whatever the unique, cool parts are, like Iron Man and this or that, and it's still a business, right? How do you guys make sure that you're always on track, for things like payroll, right? Like, that's the thing that you and your business partner, that's on your guys' shoulders. I have to maybe I'm wrong, but I would have to guess that there have been times when it was a little lean or maybe looked a little scary in terms of pipeline projects in the pipeline, and you still got to manage the obligations of a business. Talk a little bit about the process or what you guys have learned as best practices for running a highly creative agency like Perception that, again, does more high impact work. It isn't quite as easy as picking up a phone and calling 1,000 companies and asking them if they want some PPC services.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to make payroll. You still got to run a business.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've had opportunities where we'll get calls from startups and they'll say, hey, we got this great product. We want you guys to design the user interface for it. We'll pay you in shares. That's great. But, my employees don't pay their rent in shares. Mm. So there's a lot of different, opportunities that we get, but, it happens it's crazy. When we were at RGA, August, the summertime months were always the slowest because we dealt a lot. 90% of their customer base was agencies, and agencies in the summer typically, it's summer Fridays and all that fun stuff. And that changed dramatically when we started Perception. Everything happens in chunks or in spurts. As far as, for example, the summer that just passed, we probably had maybe 2 technology projects going on, pretty small, long engagements, but we were cranking on the latest Marvel movie, which is Thor, coming out a week from tomorrow, and we were doing 2 other films as well. So it was a summer of films, so to speak, and then we just finished, and now we've got about 6 technology projects lined up. So, number one, it's hard to predict, when these things happen, which is why we never get comfortable. We're just constantly hitting it. Even when, I feel like it's easier to get more work when you're busy than it is when you're slow, because there's definitely a change and a tone in your voice. It's almost like you're saying, hey, we'd love to work with you, but deep down inside, if you read between the lines, like, please hire us because we have no money coming in.
Right.
So, so I think it's something that you just constantly have to do. There's no downtime. There's been definitely some scary times where it's like, man, there is nothing going on here right now. If we don't get something in soon, like we're laying off people, or we're closing the doors, or I'm hitting my daughter's 529 fund to keep this place open another, month or whatever it is. But that's going to happen. That's part of being an entrepreneur, and that's part of running your own agency. So, for me, it all comes down to just don't get comfortable and just keep cranking and, build those relationships, tell your story. One of the things that helped us tremendously is we started getting very, very involved with our social channels. So we have a YouTube channel. So that was another way to tell the story that we couldn't tell on our website. So if for example, we work with a lot of automotive brands. If you go to the YouTube channel, I might or might not have said what car company was my favorite project. So if you connect the 2 together, if you go to the website and you listen to my YouTube, you'll know what brand it was and what car it is. But so there's that. We have the Perception podcast, where we have some interesting guests like Chris Bangle, who's a famous car automotive designer, Henrik Fisker. So doing a lot of different things that help share the story to the world really starts to help shape the new clients and bring in new clients and help us try to zero in on who is that customer.
Right.
I didn't know that the customer was, the head of innovation or the head of customer experience. Because to me, customer experience is like, all right, he's probably the head of when someone has a complaint and they want to go in and talk about customer experience, right?
Right.
But there's a whole different, there's a whole different side that it's customer experience of all their products, of course. So that's how you then start to figure out and start to narrow in on who these people are and are they the right people to reach out to.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. As we wrap up here, last couple of questions for you. You just mentioned that you guys have a podcast,
Mhm.
that you guys tell a story, and you have a YouTube channel. What all are you guys' resources online that people can go and interact with and find out more information about you guys? You have obviously the website, which is experienceperception.com.
Yep.
And then you guys have a YouTube channel. Is that under Experience Perception as well?
That's actually under Perception NYC. So if you go to YouTube and search Perception NYC, you'll see our logo and
Got it. Okay. And then the podcast, I'm assuming, is on your guys' website.
Yep. Yeah. So everything's actually on our website. You know, you can follow us on Twitter, all that stuff. But if you go to the Perception channel on our website, it basically just mimics the YouTube channel. So you don't have to go to YouTube. You can go there, and then the podcast also is on there, but it'll play from there. But if you wanted to download it from the iTunes player, you could do that as well. So in case you want to do it on the train or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. And what's the name of your guys' podcast show?
It's the Perception Podcast.
The Perception Podcast. Got it. Awesome. Well, Danny, I appreciate you coming on and sharing so openly and so much, and just sharing the story behind Perception, but also just the story of how you guys go about in getting high profile, high impact projects like this. On behalf of everybody here at the Agency Summit, I know that this has been a very insightful episode and session for those who are trying to duplicate or build an agency similar to kind of what you guys have. So I know there's been a lot of value for them. So on behalf of those folks and on behalf of myself, thanks for supporting us and the summit and coming on today and sharing.
Yeah. Thank you again for having us. I hope it was insightful for everybody.